The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. It floated in the empty space between three galaxies, a massive sphere of crystal and metal that could hold 10,000 delegates from across the known universe. Today, every seat was filled. Every eye, every sensor, every tendril was focused on the center platform where the vote would take place. Park Deho stood alone on the human delegation's platform. He was 73 years old. His hair was white. His face was lined with deep wrinkles from decades of smiling and frowning and thinking hard about difficult problems. He had served as humanity's ambassador for 31 years. He had seen many votes in this chamber. He had never seen one like this. High Arbiter Velos, a creature of living light and ancient wisdom, called for silence. The chamber obeyed instantly. Velos had ruled the council for 400 years. When he spoke, the universe listened. "The motion before this council is simple," Velos announced, his voice reaching every corner of the vast room. "Humanity has served the Coalition for 300 years. They have built our jump gates. They have healed our sick. They have fought our wars. But they are young. They are aggressive. They are unpredictable. The motion proposes that humans be permanently barred from all leadership positions within the Coalition." Deho kept his face calm. He had known this was coming. The whispers had been growing for years. Humans were too ambitious. Humans asked too many questions. Humans did not know their place. The voting began. Species after species cast their decision. The Thrall, with their silver scales and cold logic, voted yes. The Vorks, floating clouds of gas and electricity, voted yes. The Montari, ancient beings of stone and crystal, voted yes. On and on it went. Yes, yes, yes. Each vote was a small wound. Each vote said the same thing. You are not one of us. A few species voted no. The small ones. The weak ones. The ones who remembered that human doctors had saved their children. The ones who knew that human soldiers had died protecting their worlds. But they were too few. The final count appeared in glowing numbers above the chamber. 847 to 12. The motion passed. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. Others looked satisfied. A few looked at the human platform with something like pity. Deho ignored them all. He bowed once. It was a deep bow, the kind his grandmother had taught him as a child in Bizon. The alien delegates saw it as submission. They saw it as acceptance. They did not understand what it truly meant. It meant goodbye. Deho straightened. He looked at High Arbiter Velos, and for just a moment, something passed between them. A warning. A promise. Then the old ambassador turned and walked off the platform. He did not look back. In his pocket, his communication device was already transmitting a coded message to Earth. Just 5 words in an old Korean dialect that no alien had ever bothered to learn. The garden needs tending. 12 light years away, in a small office on the moon. A young woman named Choi Sung-min received the message. She was the commander of Earth's defense forces, though the Coalition did not know how large those forces truly were. Humans had learned long ago to keep some things secret. Sung-min read the message. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Then she opened them and began making calls. The withdrawal began quietly. No announcements. No protests. No angry speeches. Humans simply started leaving. On Starbase Meridian, Commander Lee Yuna finished her shift in the engineering bay and informed the station chief that she was resigning. The chief, a massive Vorix named Gel, was confused. Resigning? But you are the only one who understands the power grid. You cannot leave. I can, Yuna said politely. And I am. But who will maintain the systems? Yuna thought about this question. She had spent 15 years maintaining this station. She had rebuilt the power grid 3 times. She had saved the station from destruction during the Keth raids. She had trained dozens of alien engineers, though none of them had ever quite grasped the human methods. "You voted us unfit to lead," she said finally. "Surely those more fit than us can handle basic maintenance." She walked to her quarters and packed her bag. She owned very little. Humans in coalition space learned to travel light. On her way to the shuttle bay, she passed colleagues she had worked with for years. Some asked where she was going. Some asked her to stay. One throw engineer, a young female named Thisra, actually grabbed her arm. "Una, please. This is madness." The vote was just politics. "It means nothing." Una gently removed the alien's grip from her arm. "It means everything," she said. "It means you think we are servants. And we are nobody's servants." The shuttle bay was crowded. Humans from every department were boarding transports. They carried their bags quietly. They spoke in low voices. There was no anger on their faces. There was something else. Something the aliens could not read. It was dignity. Una was the last human to board. She stood at the shuttle door and looked back at Starbase Meridian. She remembered arriving here as a young engineer, full of hope and excitement. She remembered believing that the stars were full of friends waiting to be found. She had been wrong. The door closed. The shuttle launched. Starbase Meridian grew smaller and smaller until it was just another dot of light among the stars. In Geneva, on Earth, Ambassador Daiho watched the reports coming in. 11,241 humans had submitted their resignations across coalition space. Every single one. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, teachers, scientists, administrators. All of them were coming home. His aide, a young man named Wang Jun-seo, brought him tea. "Sir, the council is demanding an explanation. They want to know why we are leaving." Daiho took the tea and sipped it slowly. It was barley tea, the kind his wife used to make before she passed. "They know why," he said. "They are saying it is an overreaction. They are saying we are being childish. Let them say what they want. Sir, they are threatening consequences." Daiho smiled. It was not a happy smile. What consequences can they threaten? We built their gates. We heal their sick. We hold their borders. Without us, they have nothing but their pride. He set down his tea and looked out the window. The sun was setting over the mountains. It was beautiful. He had almost forgotten how beautiful Earth could be. "For 300 years, we gave them everything," he said softly. "Our knowledge, our labor, our blood. And what did they give us? A vote that said we were not good enough to lead. A vote that said we would always be beneath them. So, what do we do now?" Daiho turned to face his aide. His old eyes were calm but firm. "Now we wait. We go home. We tend our gardens and raise our children and remember who we are. And when they come begging, because they will come begging, we will decide if they have truly learned. And if they haven't..." The old ambassador walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "Then they will learn the hardest lesson the universe has to teach. You do not know what you have until it is gone." He left the room. Behind him, the first reports of system failures were already beginning to arrive from across coalition space. The humans were gone, and the galaxy was about to discover just how much it needed them. 3 weeks passed after the humans left. At first, the coalition pretended nothing was wrong. The council made speeches about self-reliance and moving forward. The news channels talked about new opportunities for other species to step up and prove themselves. Everything would be fine, they said. The humans were not that important. Then, Jump Gate Sigma 7 began to fail. The gate was one of the oldest in coalition space. It connected 12 major trade routes and handled over 1,000 ships every day. Humans had built it 200 years ago. Humans had maintained it ever since. Now there were no humans, and the quantum stabilizers were oscillating beyond safe levels. Chief Engineer Morthax of the Thrall was sent to fix the problem. He was considered one of the finest engineers in the Coalition. He had studied at the greatest academies. He had degrees and certificates that filled an entire wall. He arrived at Sigma 7 confident that he could handle whatever the humans had left behind. He was wrong. The technical manuals were written in human mathematical notation. The diagrams used human conceptual frameworks. The entire system was built on assumptions that made perfect sense to human minds, but seemed like madness to everyone else. Morthax stared at the equations for hours. He called in experts from 3 different species. They argued and debated and ran simulations. Nothing worked. The oscillations grew worse. "This makes no sense," Morthax said, his silver scales rippling with frustration. "Why would they design it this way?" His assistant, a young Thrall named Vex, looked at the manual again. "Sir, I think this notation assumes the reader already knows something called intuitive physics. I do not know what that means. Neither do I. Should we contact the humans? Ask them for help?" Morthax's scales turned dark with anger. "We will not beg them for help. We voted them unfit to lead. We cannot go crawling back after 3 weeks." The oscillations reached critical levels. Alarms filled the station. Ships in the queue began turning back, but 14 cargo vessels were already inside the gate's field. They could not escape. Gate Sigma 7 collapsed at 14:32 Coalition Standard Time. The spatial tier lasted only 3 seconds, but it was enough. 14 ships vanished. 6,000 lives ended in an instant. The gate was gone, and with it, the fastest route between the core worlds and the outer rim. The news spread across the Coalition like a wave of cold water. Suddenly, people were not so confident anymore. On the hospital world of Mercy's Haven, things were even worse. Dr. Kim Tae-young had been the head of emergency medicine for 9 years. She had trained every doctor on staff. She had written the protocols. She had built a system that could handle any crisis. When she left, she handed everything over to Dr. Vorath, a Vorlon physician with impressive credentials. Dr. Vorath was a good doctor. He was smart and skilled and cared deeply about his patients. But Vorlon medicine was built on a simple principle. Every life is equally sacred, and no life should ever be sacrificed for another. There was no concept of triage in Vorlon culture. The idea of letting one patient die to save another was morally unthinkable. Human medicine was different. Humans understood that sometimes there were not enough resources to save everyone. Sometimes you had to make terrible choices. Sometimes you had to decide who lived and who died. It was painful and ugly, and no doctor ever got used to it. But it was necessary. When the mining accident happened, 400 casualties arrived at Mercy's Haven in less than an hour. The hospital had resources for maybe 150 serious cases. Someone had to decide who got treated first. Someone had to make the hard calls. Dr. Vorath froze. He stood in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by screaming patients and desperate nurses, and he could not move. His training had not prepared him for this. His culture had not prepared him for this. Every patient deserved equal care. How could he choose? The nurses waited for orders. The minutes passed. Patients who might have lived began to die. Blood pooled on the floors. The screaming grew quieter as more and more voices fell silent. By the time Dr. Vorath finally started giving orders, 83 patients were already dead. They were miners from a small colony, workers with families and dreams and futures. They died because no one could make the choices that Dr. Kim had made every day without hesitation. When the reports reached the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Velos called an emergency session. "This is unacceptable," he declared, his form flickering with agitation. "We must reach out to the humans. We must bring them back." The council agreed. A formal message was prepared. It expressed regret for any misunderstandings. It offered the humans partial reinstatement of their previous privileges. It promised them a seat on the secondary council, an advisory body with no real power. It was, the council believed, a generous offer. The message was transmitted to Earth with the highest priority codes. Ambassador Park. Deho received it while sitting in his grandmother's garden in Bizen. The garden was small but beautiful, filled with flowers and vegetables and a single ancient cherry tree. His grandmother had planted that tree 70 years ago. She was gone now, but the tree remained. Deho read the message aloud. Around him sat the human leadership: Admiral Choi Sung-min, Professor Yoon Ji-won, and a dozen others. They listened in silence, sipping tea and watching the clouds pass overhead. "They want us back," Deho said when he finished. Admiral Choi set down her cup. "And what are they offering?" "An apology that is not really an apology. Some of our old jobs back. A seat at the children's table." So they still do not understand. No, they think this is a negotiation. They think we left because we wanted better terms. Professor Yoon, a woman of 60 with gray hair and sharp eyes, shook her head slowly. They see us as employees demanding a raise. They do not see that we were never employees at all. We were family offering gifts. And they spat on our gifts. The group sat in silence for a long moment. Somewhere nearby, a bird was singing. The cherry tree swayed gently in the wind. It was peaceful here. It was home. What should we tell them? Deho asked. Admiral Choi picked up her tea again. Nothing. Nothing? Nothing. We do not explain ourselves to people who refuse to understand. Let them sit with the silence. Let them feel what it is like to call out and receive no answer. Deho nodded slowly. He understood. Sometimes silence was louder than any words. He put the message away and returned to his tea. The coalition's request went unanswered. Days passed, then weeks. More systems failed. More gates collapsed. More people died. And still the humans said nothing. On Earth, life continued. Farmers worked their fields. Teachers taught their students. Children played in parks. Musicians wrote songs. Artists painted pictures. Humanity turned inward, not with anger, but with a quiet peace. They had spent 300 years trying to be accepted by the galaxy. They had given everything they had. And in return, they had been told they were not good enough. Now, they were done trying. Let the galaxy come to them. By the second month, the coalition was falling apart. It started slowly, like cracks spreading through ice. One system would fail, then another, then 3 more. The failures fed each other, growing faster and faster until no one could keep up. The jump gates were the worst problem. Humans had designed them using principles that no other species fully understood. The gates worked perfectly as long as someone who understood them was watching. Without that understanding, small problems became big problems. Big problems became disasters. 7 more gates collapsed in the second month. Trade routes that had functioned for centuries suddenly stopped working. Goods that should have taken days to deliver now took weeks. Prices rose. Shortages spread. Colonies that depended on regular shipments began to run out of food and medicine. But the gates were not the only problem. The coalition's economic systems had been designed by human mathematicians. They were elegant and efficient and completely beyond the understanding of anyone who had not spent years studying human mathematical theory. When the humans left, they took their knowledge with them. The systems kept running, but no one knew how to fix them when they broke. A Rilken economist named Tavar later tried to explain what happened. "Imagine you're playing a musical instrument," he said. "You have been playing it for years. It sounds beautiful. Then one day, the person who built the instrument takes away all the instructions and burns the piano. You still have the music in your head, but you cannot make any sound. That is what the humans did to us. They did not break anything. They simply left, and we discovered we did not know how anything worked. The economy began producing errors. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. Banks made mistakes. Transfers went to wrong accounts. Records vanished. Within 6 weeks, the entire financial system was showing signs of collapse. And then the Keth came. The Keth were raiders from the Outer Rim. For centuries, they had attacked coalition colonies, stealing resources and taking prisoners. Human soldiers had held them back. Human tactics had kept them afraid. Human unpredictability had made them cautious. Now that humans were gone, the Keth elders gathered in their war halls and studied the reports. The human ships had withdrawn. The human commanders had resigned. The defensive lines were held by Threll and Vorax officers who fought by the book, who followed predictable patterns, who did exactly what military theory said they should do. The Keth had studied human warfare for generations. They knew every trick, every surprise, every wild gamble the human commanders loved to make. But they had never learned to fight like humans. They had only learned to defend against humans, against predictable enemies. They were unstoppable. The first attack hit Colony Varn 4. The Coalition fleet responded exactly as expected. The Keth had prepared for this response. The battle lasted 3 hours. The Coalition lost 40 ships. Colony Varn 4 fell. The second attack hit 3 colonies at once. The Coalition split its forces to defend all 3. The Keth concentrated on one target and overwhelmed it before moving to the next. All 3 colonies fell in a single day. 12 colony worlds were conquered in 8 days. Billions of people came under Keth control. The Coalition fleet retreated again and again, unable to adapt, unable to surprise, unable to do anything the Keth did not expect. On Earth, the news arrived quietly. Admiral Choi Seung-min read the reports in her office, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She had windows that showed the sunset every evening, and she often worked late just to watch the colors change. Her aide, a young officer named Baek Min-soo, brought her the latest update. 12 worlds, Admiral. The Keth are moving toward the core. Choi nodded slowly. She had expected this. How long until they reach Coalition Central Space? At their current pace, maybe 4 months. And the Council? They are panicking. They have sent 17 more requests for human assistance, each one more desperate than the last. Choi turned to look at the sunset. The sky was orange and pink and beautiful. She thought about the people on those 12 colonies. She thought about the fear they must be feeling. It hurt her heart to know the people were suffering while she sat here, watching the sunset. But she also knew that going back now would change nothing. The Coalition would accept human help, push back the Keth, and then return to treating humans as servants. The cycle would repeat. The lesson would never be learned. Keep the fleet in reserve, she said. Maintain training. Be ready. Ready for what, Admiral? For the moment when they truly understand. Meanwhile, High Arbiter Velos made a decision that no High Arbiter had made in 400 years. He would go to Earth himself. He would speak to the humans face to face. He would make them understand that the Coalition needed them. His advisors warned him against it. Going to Earth was beneath his dignity, they said. It would make the Council look weak. It would give the humans too much power. Velos did not care. He had watched the Coalition he had spent his life building start to crumble. He had seen the reports of dead colonists and fallen worlds. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. His shuttle landed in Geneva on a cool spring morning. The city was beautiful and clean, full of humans going about their daily lives. They did not seem worried. They did not seem angry. They were just living. A young human woman met him at the landing pad. She wore a simple uniform and carried a small computer pad. "I Arbiter Velos," she said politely. "I am Kim So-young. I will be your liaison during your stay. I need to speak with Ambassador Park immediately. I am sorry, but the ambassador is not available. This is urgent. The coalition is falling. The Keth are advancing. I must speak with someone in authority." So-young checked her computer pad. "The ambassador is in business visiting family. The admiral is in a meeting. The Council of Nations is in session and cannot be disturbed. Then who can I speak with? Me, I suppose. Would you like some tea while you wait?" Velos stared at her. He was the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council. He had ruled over 1,000 species for 4 centuries. And this young woman was offering him tea. How long must I wait? So-young smiled apologetically. "I am not sure. Perhaps a few days. Perhaps longer. Everyone is quite busy." "Busy with what?" "Your people have withdrawn from galactic affairs. What could possibly be keeping them busy?" "Life, High Arbiter. Just life." She led him to a modest building with comfortable chairs and large windows. She brought him tea and small rice cakes. She answered his questions with polite brevity and then left him alone. Velos sat in that room for 17 days. He watched humans walk past the windows, going to work and coming home, playing with children and walking with friends. He saw them laugh and argue and hug each other. He saw them living lives that had nothing to do with the coalition or the Keth, or the collapsing gates. For the first time in 400 years, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council felt completely invisible, and he began to understand, just a little, how the humans must have felt for the last 300 years. High Arbiter Velos had ruled the Galactic Council for 400 years. He had ended wars. He had built alliances. He had shaped the destiny of 1,000 species. Kings and emperors and presidents had bowed before him. The greatest minds in the galaxy had sought his wisdom. He had never felt small before. He felt small now. The room where he waited was not uncomfortable. The chairs were soft. The windows let in plenty of light. The tea was good, and the young woman named So-young brought him fresh cups every few hours. But no one important came to see him. No one seemed to care that he was there. On the 5th day, So-young brought him lunch. Rice and vegetables and some kind of soup. Simple food, but well made. "When will someone see me?" Velos asked. He had asked this question many times. The answer was always the same. "I do not know, High Arbiter. Everyone is busy. Busy with what? Your people have left the coalition. You have no responsibilities anymore. What could possibly be keeping your leaders so occupied?" So-young set down the tray and thought about the question. She was maybe 25 years old, with a round face and calm eyes. She looked like someone who had never worried about anything in her life. "My father is a fisherman," she said. "He wakes up every morning at 4 o'clock to take his boat out to sea. He catches fish and brings them back to sell at the market. Then he fixes his nets and cleans his boat and goes to bed early so he can do it all again the next day. What does that have to do with anything? My father has never thought about the Galactic Council. He does not know who you are. He does not care about jump gates or trade routes or Keth raiders. He cares about fish and his family and whether the weather will be good tomorrow." She paused. "I think you believed that when humans left the coalition, we would have nothing to do. But we have plenty to do. We just do it for ourselves now, not for you." Velos did not know what to say. The idea that humans could be happy without the coalition had never occurred to him. The idea that they could be happy without the galaxy had seemed impossible. But here they were, happy. On the 17th day, Ambassador Park Daeho finally arrived. He came walking through the door at 9 in the morning, wearing old clothes and carrying a cooler full of fish. He smelled like salt water and sweat. His white hair was messy from the wind. "Hi, Arbiter," he said cheerfully. "I hear you have been waiting." Velos stood up quickly. "Ambassador Park, finally, we must talk about the crisis. The coalition is falling apart. The Keth are advancing. Without human help, everything will be lost." Daeho set his cooler on the table and began unpacking his catch. Silver fish with bright eyes and shining scales. He examined each one carefully, nodding with satisfaction. "My grandson caught most of these," he said. "He's getting very good. Another few years, and he will be better than me. Ambassador, please. This is urgent. The fish will spoil if I do not clean them. Sit, watch. We can talk while I work." Velos said. He had no choice. The old ambassador was not going to be rushed. Daeho pulled out a knife and began cleaning the first fish with practiced hands. His movements were smooth and confident. He had done this 1,000 times. "You know what the council's mistake was?" he asked without looking up. "Tell me." "It was not the vote. The vote was just a symptom. The real mistake was older than that." "Much older? What was it?" Daeho held up a fish and examined it. "You looked at humans and saw what we could do for you. You saw engineers who could build your gates, doctors who could heal your sick, soldiers who could fight your wars. You saw tools, useful tools, and you treated us the way you treat all tools. You used us until you got tired of us, and then you set us aside. That is not true. Humans were valued members of the coalition. Were we?" Daeho resumed his work. "Then, why were we never allowed to lead? Why were human proposals always studied for years, while others were approved in days? Why did human officers always serve under alien commanders, even when the humans had more experience?" Velos had no answer. "We gave freely," Daeho continued. "For 300 years we gave everything we had. Our knowledge, our labor, our lives. We did not ask for payment. We did not demand respect. We only hoped that someday the galaxy would see us as family. And the vote made clear that we did not." "Yes." Velos's form flickered with something that might have been shame. "The vote was a mistake. I see that now. We can change things. We can give humans leadership positions. You can do nothing." Daeho's voice was still calm, but there was iron underneath it. "You cannot undo 300 years of treating us like servants. You cannot suddenly decide we are equals because you need us. That is not how respect works. Then what can I do?" The old ambassador finished cleaning his fish and washed his hands. He dried them slowly, thinking. "I do not know," he said finally. "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps the time for doing is past, and now is the time for learning." "Learning what?" "Learning what it feels like to need someone who does not need you back. Learning what it feels like to call out and hear only silence. Learning what it feels like to be small and helpless and ignored." He looked directly at Velos. "You have been in power for 400 years. You have never known what it is like to be powerless. Now you will learn. Billions will die. The Keth will destroy everything. Yes, that is possible. And you will just let it happen?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was sad. "I have grandchildren," he said. "I want them to grow up in a galaxy where humans are respected. Not tolerated. Not used. Respected. If we go back now, nothing will change. You will smile and thank us and give us pretty titles, and in 50 years, you will vote against us again. The cycle will never end. So you will let the galaxy burn to teach us a lesson? No, we will let the galaxy burn so that the lesson is remembered. There's a difference. Velos had no response. He sat in silence while Deho packed up his fish and prepared to leave Dot at the door. The old ambassador paused. I am sorry, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. I wish things were different. I wish you had learned this lesson earlier when the cost was smaller. But you did not. And now we all must pay the price. He left. Velos sat alone in the quiet room, surrounded by the smell of fish and the distant sounds of human life. He thought about the Keth advancing. He thought about the colonies falling. He thought about the billions of lives that hung in the balanced dot, and for the first time in 400 years, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council did not know what to do. 6 months after the humans withdrew, the Keth fleet entered Coalition core space. The final defensive line had fallen 2 weeks earlier. The Coalition fleet, what remained of it, was scattered and broken. Every strategy had failed. Every trick had been predicted. Every brave stand had been overwhelmed. The Keth had learned from centuries of fighting humans and against non-human opponents. They were unstoppable. 300 billion lives waited in the core worlds. Civilians, children, the elderly, the sick, people who had never held a weapon and never would. They watched the news reports with quiet terror, knowing that no help was coming, knowing that the end was near. High Arbiter Velos stood in the council chamber for what might be the last time. The great room was nearly empty. Most delegates had fled to their home worlds. Only a handful remained, the stubborn ones and the brave ones and the ones who had nowhere else to go. Velos looked at them. These were the species that had voted against humanity 6 months ago. These were the ones who had called humans aggressive and unpredictable and unfit to lead. They did not look proud now. They looked scared. I will do what must be done, Velos said. He opened a channel to Earth. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, across every system that still had working communications. To the people of Earth, he said. To humanity. I am High Arbiter Velos of the Galactic Council. I speak to you not as a leader, but as a beggar. The Coalition is dying. The Keth will reach our core worlds in days. When they arrive, billions will perish. He paused. His form flickered with emotions he had not felt in centuries. We wronged you. We used you. We took everything you offered and gave nothing in return. We told you that you were not good enough to lead, even as we depended on you for everything. We were fools. We were blind. We were wrong. He lowered his head, a gesture of submission he had never made in 400 years of rule. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I only ask for mercy. Not for me. For the billions who will die. For the children who have never hurt anyone. Please, name your terms. Anything. Everything. Just help us. The broadcast ended. Velos waited. The council waited. The galaxy waited for 3 long hours. There was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was not Ambassador Park. It was Admiral Choi Soo-min. High Arbiter Velos. This is Admiral Choi of Earth Defense Command. We have received your message. Admiral, please, what is your answer? We do not want your surrender. We never wanted to rule you. We only wanted to be treated as equals. As family, you can have that. You can have anything. We know. There was a pause. The human fleet will jump to Coalition space in 2 hours. But we will not fight your war for you. Then what will you do? We will protect what cannot protect itself. The channel closed. Velos did not understand. What did she mean? How could they protect without fighting? 2 hours later, he understood. The human fleet jumped into Coalition space. It was larger than anyone had imagined. For 300 years, humans had been building ships in secret, preparing for the day when they might need to defend themselves. That day had never come. But the ships were ready. 3,000 human warships appeared in the sky above the core worlds. But they did not head for the front lines. They did not engage the Keth. Instead, they took up positions around the civilian populations, around the hospitals and schools and refugee convoys, around the stations where the sick and elderly waited, around everything that could not fight back. Admiral Choi broadcast one message to the coalition fleet: you fight your own war. We will protect what cannot fight for itself. Win or lose, the innocent will survive. That is our gift to you. Not because you deserve it, because that is who we are. The coalition commanders stared at their screens in shock. The humans had come, but they had not come to save the coalition. They had come to save the helpless. For the first time in 6 months, the coalition fleet felt something other than fear. They felt shame. They looked at the human ships guarding the civilians. They saw humans who had been betrayed and abandoned, willing to risk their lives for people who had treated them like servants. They saw a courage that had nothing to do with winning, and everything to do with doing what was right. And something changed. The coalition fleet stopped retreating. Ship by ship, they turned to face the Keth. They stopped following predictable patterns. They stopped doing what the book said they should do. They started fighting like humans, wild, unpredictable, desperate. The Keth had prepared for predictable opponents. They had not prepared for this. The war lasted 8 more months. It was bloody and terrible and costly. Many died. Many more would have died if the humans had not been there, pulling civilians out of combat zones, shielding refugee ships, rushing medical supplies to devastated colonies. In the end, the coalition won. Barely. The victory celebration was quiet. There were too many dead to celebrate loudly. But there was a feeling in the air, a sense that something had changed forever. Ambassador Park Dae-ho returned to the council chamber. He did not return alone. With him came farmers and teachers and doctors and engineers. Ordinary humans who had been asked to represent humanity at this moment. We will help you rebuild, Dae-ho announced. Not because you asked. Not because you earned it. Because that is who we are. But this time, you will remember something important. What must we remember? Bellows asked. That we choose to be here. We can choose to leave. Partnership requires memory. It requires gratitude. It requires understanding that every gift can be the last gift. The council listened in silence. There were no arguments this time. No debates. No votes about whether humans were fit to lead. They had learned. Lieutenant Park Hana, the young woman who had made Velos wait for 17 days, stood beside her grandfather. Velos looked at her and remembered how small she had made him feel. How invisible. I have a question, he said to her. After everything we did, after the vote and the silence and the dying, why did you come back at all? Why did you help us? Hana smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when offering him tea all those months ago. Because you needed us, she said simply. And humans do not abandon people who need them. Even people who hurt us. Even people who do not deserve help. We help anyway. That is our weakness. That is our strength. That is who we are. Velos understood then. He finally understood what the humans had been offering all along. Not service. Not submission. Not tools to be used and set aside. They had been offering family. And family, as humans knew better than anyone, was not something you earned. It was something you built, mistake by painful mistake, until it finally held. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had not come to the stars seeking power or glory or conquest. They had come seeking family, and now, at last, they have found it.